welcome to Palace Confidential. It's the Mail Plus show about all things royal, recorded just around the corner from Kensington Palace. I'm Jo Elvin, and my guests today are Rebecca English, the Daily Mail's royal editor, Richard Eden, Saturday diarist at the Mail, and seasoned royal writer, and who's also deputy features editor at the Mail on Sunday, it's Kate Mansey. And here's what you have to look forward to today. Yes, Queen. I promise I'll never say that again, everyone. As Camilla takes a step closer to earning the top title, we discuss the rise of the Duchess of Cornwall, plus royal historian Penny Junor gives us her view on the life of Camilla. And from fashion to fashionable causes, we look at the post-Megxit rise of the Duchess of Cambridge. But first, another week, and it's another royal exit. Yes, sadly, we all know this time it's Autumn Phillips, wife of Princess Anne's son, Peter Phillips. The pair announced that they had actually been separated since 2019 and planned to divorce. Rebecca, I'm going to come to you first, royal expert. Obviously, this is just terrible timing. It just seems to be this avalanche of bad news with the royal family.
Yeah, it does seem like one thing after another. And for the Queen, this is a really sad milestone because it's the first of her grandchildren to get a divorce after the marriage woes of 3 of her 4 children. I mean, any grandmother, whether you're Queen or not, would you know, feel that hard.
And I don't know, is it just that we expect that the royals won't get divorced and they're just normal people? Am I wrong to think they've got sort of this disproportionately bad record?
Well, I think we've come to expect that they do get divorced, unfortunately. I mean, it's a peculiar world they live in. You know, there are unique pressures on them. And although this did come as quite a surprise to us initially, the announcement, when I spoke to friends and spoke to sources, they said actually this has been on the cards for a while. There's been quite a lot of marriage difficulties. You know, they were together for 12 years. You know, it's not a short marriage. But equally, this is something that I think has been on the cards for a while.
And they've escaped for a long time, haven't they, Kate, any really forensic scrutiny?
Well, yeah, I think you've got with Peter and Zara, because their mother didn't give them the royal titles when they were born, they've had a sort of a non-royal royal life, so obviously royal blood, but they've not been kind of full-time working royals. So to some extent, they've escaped that scrutiny of what they've been up to, you know, in terms of their financial affairs. But
well, speaking of that kind of scrutiny, I mean, Richard, this does put that bizarre Chinese milkhead in a whole new perspective.
When I saw that ad, I thought this has got to be a spoof. I just couldn't believe it was real. But when we did checks and we found out actually he really had recorded this excruciating milk ad for Chinese TV. And now we know why. I mean, he was obviously trying to build up some funds to pay for this divorce.
But it's not the first time, is it? He's ended up in this sort of hot water. They sold the rights of their wedding to Glossy magazine, and it's OK, you're not a full-time working member of the royal family, but it's incredibly tacky, and that's how it's...
Well, but I suppose playing devil's advocate slightly in their defence, where do they sit? How much of the public purse are they privy to, or how much are they supposed to be financially sufficient? So where do we draw the line on what we accept?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, they're not taking public funds. They're not doing duties on behalf of the Queen in an official capacity. But at the same time, if you're using that kind of royal brand in order to get you know, some sort of financial benefit for yourself. So I think that's where this sort of murky world, because initially we thought, OK, Peter Phillips, he'd be a great example for Harry to follow, stepping away from those kind of full-time duties and actually not taking money from the public purse and earning his own keep, as it were. But then you enter this murky world, don't you, where you are the reason they want Peter to do those adverts in China is because he is a member of the royal family. And I think the advert even said about, you know, the royals start their day with tea and milk, you know, it's just...
very cringeworthy.
It's very cringeworthy,
I just hope this divorce is settled amicably, because otherwise what else is he going to have to do to make money?
That was my next question. Do we see this being played out in a really tawdry fashion in public, or do we see it as a quickie thing that we won't hear much about? What do you think, Rebecca?
Well, they've stressed they're going to resolve this amicably, and I'm told the focus is very much on their girls. They've got daughters of 9 and 7, and let's face it, he is Princess Anne's son, and this is just not Princess Anne's way to try and play things out in the public arena, I don't think. So I think they are doing everything they can to just keep it smooth, on an even keel. I think we'll get an announcement in a few months' time saying that the divorce has gone through and they're going to continue co-parenting their children.
I really hope that Autumn doesn't move back to her native Canada, because you know, you've seen the lovely pictures of their children playing with Zara, Mike Tyndall's kids.
It's heartbreaking when any children are involved, isn't it?
It's so sad. That it is really
Yeah.
sad on a personal level for the family. It's a tragedy, and like you say, the Queen must be devastated by.
Well, I was told she did do everything she could to say, look, don't rush things, don't kind of move into it quickly. Have you thought about? But it was made very clear to her very quickly that this is something they'd thought about for a long time and they were going to go ahead with it. So then everyone was focusing on making sure that the kids were at the centre of any decisions that were made.
Someone tells me you've got some interesting gossip on seeing Peter a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah, well we were in a sort of gastro pub, a smart part of London, and actually Rebecca was with me. And there's a couple
Don't
of
bring Rebecca into this. She's
there were a couple of journos having a drink, which will shock you, Jo. But on the next table was Peter Phillips with a chap and a lady. And it was also, just looked like mates having a quiet drink. And when he went to the toilet, she was sort of makeup bag out, kind of really doing her hair and sort of flirting and laughing outrageously at his jokes. I mean, he wasn't flirting back, I hasten to add. But it goes to show that perhaps there'll be lots of ladies lining up now.
We need to speak to that woman for Saturday.
Well, and I do slightly feel sorry for the Queen. It's just one thing after another.
So quickly as well. It's like dominoes. One thing happened and then it all, it looks like it's all happening at once.
And you think it wasn't that long ago that her husband was in hospital, just before. I mean, that seems like a lifetime ago, and actually that was only a couple of months ago. And she had that, the continuing Duke of York, obviously the Megxit situation. I mean, that's a lot for a 93-year-old woman.
It's never dull in royal world, which is why we are here. Speaking of Peter's future and the royal family's somewhat dubious record in the marital stakes, we asked the people, would you marry a royal?
Yes, totally. if I had the chance.
I haven't been offered, but if I were like that, I'm married, so I don't think that's a proper institution to do that.
I wouldn't allow people like me to marry people like that.
Depends how she looks, her character. Yeah, it depends. I cannot deny my privacy. That's important for me. And I cannot deal with how the pressure of having the media and everybody caring about my life. So I would say no.
Sure.
Does the publicity or anything really put you off?
Not particularly. I think you keep to the shadows a bit.
No, I would not. Because I like to have a private life and control of my own destiny. Who wants that publicity and all the rubbish that goes with it?
I certainly wouldn't want to marry a royal. I think it's a ghastly job. I think it has no upside whatsoever. You have no privacy, you have no life. You dedicate yourself to the country and the nation. That's what the Queen has done. And she's been a wonderful Queen, and I have great respect for her.
But no, I've got one already.
OK, well, the front page of today's Daily Mail is an exclusive and emotional interview with the Duchess of Cornwall, written by our very own Rebecca English, in which Camilla talks about her campaign to help victims of domestic violence. It's the sort of high-profile move that will inevitably get people talking about whether one day Camilla will be Queen rather than Princess Consort. To give us some historical context, Camilla's biographer Penny Junor made us this report.
When Prince Charles married Camilla Parker Bowles in 2005, there was great nervousness about how the public would react. Their relationship had been highly controversial. Camilla was the third person in the marriage that Diana had spoken so famously about after her bitter separation from Prince Charles. And after Diana was killed so tragically in a car crash in 1997, there were many people who blamed them. Given the history, Clarence House made it clear that when the time came for the prince to ascend to the throne, Camilla would be known abnormally as Princess Consort. This was to pacify those who couldn't stomach the idea of that woman becoming queen. To many, she was a figure of hate. As it happened, the public on that day was much more forgiving than Charles, Camilla, or their advisors had feared.
Windsor was full of well-wishers. Camilla looked glorious, the sun shone, and the Queen made a very touching speech. She said that she had two announcements to make. The first was that her horse, Hedgehunter, had won the Grand National that afternoon. The second, she was delighted to be welcoming her son and his bride to the winner's enclosure. Likening the terrible obstacles they had overcome to the notoriously difficult jumps at Aintree, she concluded, "My son is home and dry with the woman he loves." It was a clear indication that the Queen liked Camilla.
To know Camilla is to like her, but back in 2005, nobody really knew her at all. They knew what Diana thought of her. She'd called her a Rottweiler and a marriage wrecker, and they knew that she'd had an adulterous affair with Prince Charles whilst married to Andrew Parker Bowles. But in all the years, she had kept a very low profile. Despite being hounded by the paparazzi and maligned by the media, she had never spoken to the press, never attempted to put the record straight or to defend herself, and neither had Prince Charles.
But once she was married, she was visible. She started to accompany Charles on engagements and foreign tours. Then she started charitable work, bringing difficult issues like sexual violence and domestic abuse into the news. And people were amazed. She was not what they expected. She lights up a room. She's enormously friendly, very warm and very funny. She's also very self-deprecating and instantly puts people at their ease. And perhaps most important of all, she has transformed the Prince of Wales. It is clear for all to see that he's happy and enjoying life again. She has given him confidence in himself that he never had before.
In April, they will have been married for 15 years, and Clarence House has quietly removed the statement about Camilla's future title from its website. What the King's wife is called is governed by custom and practice, not law. It will be Charles's decision, and my guess is that she will be Queen Camilla, a title, in my view, that she deserves.
Rebecca, you've written that amazing story today. This is obviously a cause hugely close to Camilla's heart. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I sat down with her in a room in 2016 with a charity called Safe Lives, and neither of us expected to hear what we heard. And 6 women got up and they talked about their stories. One woman had been shot by a strange husband. The other, her mother had been murdered by her partner. And I watched as the tears literally fell down Camilla's face. And I don't think that's something they expect of her. You know, that people have got quite a stereotypical view of her. But one thing I've come to learn with her is she's a lot warmer, she's a lot more emotional than people give her credit for. And she's quite kind of intellectually curious. And at the end of that meeting, she turned round to me and said, I'm not going to let this go. I've got to do something for these women.
Was that her first introduction to that whole issue?
Well, I'd done some stuff with her on the kind of issue of rape and sexual assault, but this is the first thing she'd done on domestic abuse. She was asked to come along by the friend of a friend, and I mean, she said to me in the interview today, she found it harrowing. She had nightmares after this, but just knew this was something she needed to do work on.
Yeah.
You know, she hasn't... It's a strange situation for her to find herself in. She's a 72-year-old woman that's kind of working harder than ever before, instead of retiring, which is what most people do at that age. But I think she's come to the conclusion, if I am going to do this, then I want to do something meaningful with it.
It's always been such an uneasy relationship with Camilla and the public, hasn't it? Why do we think that is? Or am I wrong about that?
But obviously we've got the old story of Diana, and you know that always raises its head. But
you know, I'm Australian. I'm not British born. I sort of like landed here as an outsider. That was so long ago.
Yeah, I think we've moved on, particularly in Britain. I think we've moved on. It's nearly 15 years since their wedding in 2005, and we've really moved on. And I think the public perception of Camilla's changed in part because through her own kind of force of personality. I think she's absolutely tremendous at what she's doing, and should definitely be queen when such time happens.
You're twitching there, Richard.
No, I agree. I think Camilla's she's done everything admirably since marrying Prince Charles, but I don't think she should be queen.
And why is that?
Because I don't think Prince Charles should be king either. I think, look, the Queen is...
This is like... I've never seen this side of you, Richard.
The Queen is 93. You know, she's in good health. Her mother lived to 101. We can see a situation where Charles and Camilla could be becoming king and queen, in their 80s. This is crazy. They should do, like the king in Spain did, and hand over to next generation. With Prince William and Kate, absolutely admirable, brilliant. It's time to pass on to the younger generation.
Maybe that could be the country's next unifying referendum.
But the thing is, Richard, they don't want it yet. They've got 3 young children. Why would they want to become a king and queen in their late 30s?
Duty calls, duty calls.
Yeah.
And you think about the Prince of Wales, he does a tremendous job. He's so busy. But he's at a time of life when most people would be retiring or stepping back, and he's doing more and more and more.
I remember that Camilla had never done a day's work in her life, so just have some sympathy, expecting her to then, be a really hard-working queen in her 80s. This is crazy. At the moment, when they go on a foreign trip, she always joins 2 or 3 days later because she can't cope with
she doesn't
such
travel
work.
very well.
She does what she can do.
I'd love to know more about her, actually. I think I have a mutual friend of Camilla's who's always telling me that she's got a fantastically wicked sense of humour, and I don't think we get to see that. And I'd love to know more, Rebecca. What you know her quite well. What's your impression of her?
Look, I'm going to put my cards on the table. I like her, and I think, and I'm sure Kate would say the same, if you ask any royal correspondent who their favourite person to work with is, it is the Duchess of Cornwall.
Absolutely.
She's funny, she's witty, she doesn't take herself too seriously, she can see the absurdness sometimes in the situation that they find themselves in, and she'll even kind of gently tease her husband, but she's the only person that's allowed to do that. She's very loyal to him as well. And she actually quite likes the company of journalists. These are all things I didn't expect to find. I think the first time I ever really spoke to her, I was on an engagement. She kind of came up and said, "Oh, I hear you're leaving early to kind of go home and tile your bathroom." It's a true story.
Wow.
And she said, "Why isn't your husband doing it?" And I said, "Well, would you get your husband to tile the bathroom?" And I looked and went, "No, you wouldn't actually, would you?"
No.
And we laughed. And then she said, "It's so nice to see some faces I recognise, that are always smiling, because you don't know how scary it is to get out of a car when you're not used to this, see all those flashbulbs. It's quite terrifying."
And of course, she has in the past run the gauntlet of the public anger in the wake of Diana.
Yeah, I mean, she had people literally throwing bread rolls at her in the supermarket.
I just don't know how anybody endures that. But do we think that anger has gone, or has it just sort of like, calmed to a dull thud? What is it?
Interestingly, I think it hasn't gone, particularly in the Commonwealth, so in your native Australia. When I was on the Kate and William tour a few years ago in Australia, there were people saying, "Oh my goodness, I'll never forgive Camilla." And it was such a kind of, a weird...
Well, news takes a lot longer to filter down to Australia, so, there's about, 2002 there.
But
They'll get there.
But it did feel that. But in America as well, though, not part of the Commonwealth, obviously, but, they're very much Diana's in their hearts, and Camilla will always be the woman that, ruined Diana's marriage. But I think here, certainly, we've moved on, and we appreciate what she's doing for the country.
That raises... Do you think it's a diplomatic issue at any point? If you've given what Kate's saying about the colonies feeling differently about...
I think it is, because why? I mean, if you did a survey now, I bet you about half wouldn't want Camilla to be queen. So why endanger the monarchy in that way? They already came to this sort of compromise where they said she would be a consort, princess consort,
rather
than a queen.
What does princess consort mean?
It's like not calling her Princess of Wales now. She's Duchess of Cornwall. It just stops winding people up.
Although they said that on the website when they married in 2005. Now that's been quietly dropped from the website.
Well, they use the word intended always. It's the kind of palace get-out clause.
Yeah.
We intend to do something, and then
I think they always
their minds change. And
like
Charles
to see her
has
as
always
queen.
wanted it. One very senior courtier said to me once, "Well, it's like you not being able to call yourself Mrs. So-and-so. Why shouldn't she have that title?" But I'm with Kate. I don't think they're quite there yet, but I do think it's a problem they need to address. But they could do it by, the Queen saying some warm words at a function and saying, "I'm very happy to see, Camilla at my son's side and think she will do a wonderful job."
Well, am I allowed to lay my cards on the table? I think I'm Team Queen.
Are you?
I think so. I'm not one of the people from the colonies who's upset about it. I think. But we want to hear what the public have to say. What do you think? Should Camilla be queen? It's time for more Vox Pops.
Well, it's way the modern family now, isn't it? So That's their choice, no one else's. So good luck to her.
A big question, but Charles will have something to do with that as well, would he not?
It might be a betrayal, but then again, people might not care as well, so I don't know.
I wouldn't have any issues with that, I don't think. A lot of the focus seems to be on the younger royal family these days. You just end up not really thinking much about the older ones. It seems less relevant somehow.
I just don't really mind, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would be sorry in the sense that it would mean that our existing queen is gone, for whom I had the greatest respect. But I don't really mind whether she is or isn't. I don't care.
I'd have no issue on it at all. I think there might need to be some changes in legislation to enable that to happen, but I'd have no issue with it at all. She would be the wife of the monarch. Simple as that.
Well, Kate Middleton has been out and about this week with the new Fab Four. That's Kate, Prince William, Prince Charles and Camilla. And she's looking more glam than ever. Yes, since Megxit, Kate's taken on more responsibility and seems to be using the spotlight to showcase her style revamp. Like so many of us, it looks like the Duchess is a huge fan of the high street. And that hasn't escaped the beady eyes of fashionistas everywhere. And we have the Daily Mail's assistant fashion editors, Amy and Emily, here with more.
Whether you like it or not, when Meghan joined the royal family, we definitely saw a different fashion wardrobe than Kate's. But Kate's been part of the royal family for nearly 10 years now, and I think this is really her year to shine, so I'm excited to see what's next for her.
Now Meghan and Harry have left the country. Since Megxit, Kate has appeared in public more than ever before, and we have seen an array of outfits.
So she actually just recently won a poll for the best dressed royal, and she won by nearly 50% of the vote, so, you know, credit to Kate. A lot of that kind of, you know, relates back to the fact that she's been wearing so many high street brands recently.
Exactly, and this is the perfect example of Kate wearing a Zara dress, which was $89.99. Kate layered this dress with an Alexander McQueen coat, which is one of the most expensive designers in the world. We reckon it was around £2,500. I love the way she layers high street with high end. I think it's really current.
Sticking to Zara, she also got an amazing leopard print skirt. It was nice to see her in animal print because we haven't seen that in quite a while. You know, she just kept it really classic. So unlike usual Kate, who would wear it with like a cream blouse or a pair of cords, she's kept winter. She's gone for a roll neck, a pair of boots. It's a really wearable look that I think we can all definitely relate to.
This is a dress Kate 100% would not have worn this time last year. This is from a British brand, not well known, called Needle and Thread. It comes in at £410, so I would say this is a high-end high street brand. Most people think that's expensive, but if you compare it to the other household big names Kate usually wears to large events like Valentino and Gucci, this is cheap. I mean, she looks incredible, and funnily enough, Holly Willoughby also wore this dress in a different colour.
And I mean, you know, you look at the embellishment on it, so I think for that price, again, it's another really great style. But then, you know, you've still got everyday royal activities to attend. So here she is at Birmingham's Science Museum. So, you know, going back to a slightly more casual look, you've got this gorgeous pussy bow blouse that's by a British brand, Tabitha Webb. They're quite a kind of boutique high street brand, so I think they're still relatively unknown to the public. I think the great thing about this is Kate favours pussy bow in colour. However, this chevron print really stands out, and I think it's just something that she wouldn't have, you know, necessarily worn last year. So she's just stepping out of her comfort zone a little bit, but still sticking to, you know, those classic styles that she just knows suits her figure and works for her.
Yeah, it's funny because it actually harks back to the time when Kate wore a Gucci blouse, but shocked everyone and wore it backwards.
For me, you know, Kate wins in the fact that I love all of these bold, bright ensembles that she wears. You know, she very much follows in the Queen's footsteps, as in the Queen we all know loves colour. And it just works for her. It really works with her colourings. And I know that whilst her stylist was away on maternity leave, she did have, rumour has it, Virginia Chadwick-Healy come in from Vogue. So, you know, that might have been as well why we were seeing some slightly different styles on her. So we look forward to following their fashion journey.
So, Kate, it's more than a style overhaul, isn't it? There seems to be something in the water. It's more of a confidence thing as well. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think she's really grown in confidence, certainly since I started doing the job about 10 years ago.
Well, you wrote a great piece for me on You magazine, all about what you think of what you've observed about her transformation.
So I just remembered there was an event where she was at the National Portrait Gallery. She was going there to open a new exhibition, and she was doing some public speaking, which she used to hate. And the aides at the palace used to always say to us, well, she might be speaking, she might not, when she went on these tours. And they would always kind of leave it up to the last minute because to give her a sort of get-out clause, because she hated it so much. And then recently she's been kind of, you know, full fettle. She's found her voice, for want of better metaphor. And she's really kind of come out of herself. And then you see it time and time again. She's just much more natural on these engagements. She's not so stiff. She doesn't wear the mask of, I'm being the Duchess of Cambridge.
Yeah.
She's just herself, and it's so nice to see that kind of authentic kind of Kate come through, the slightly more daring kind of fashion lines and being a bit more fashionable, a bit more trendy, less kind of uniform. You know, I've got the royal uniform on.
Is that your?
It's nice to see.
Is that your take? I mean, you've spent a lot of time with the Duchess on royal tours. What's your personal experience?
Well, I was also with them at the new Fab Four engagement in Loughborough on Tuesday, and she was really stepping up her game. There was one point where William was standing around, they were looking at some people playing wheelchair basketball. No one was actually doing anything much, it was a bit stilted, and I saw her turn to William and basically go on, do it. Now, you wouldn't have seen that a few years ago.
That's
definitely. And then he said he couldn't shoot the hoops in, and then Prince Charles, very naturally, and I double-checked, and it definitely wasn't planned or staged, kind of shoved his way past the people and then pushed his son, and there was a kind of moment where they squeezed their shoulders.
That was a glorious picture, wasn't it?
It was a really fantastic picture. It was a very nice moment because you don't normally see that interaction between father and son
united
as well.
front, yeah.
But it was really interesting seeing her spot the photo opportunity that wasn't quite working and make it work. And that's definitely something we haven't seen before.
That's a growth in confidence. But Richard, do you see in this, particularly post-Megxit, the style overhaul, the confidence overhaul, is that a calculation on their part, or do you think she's just naturally grown into the role?
It might be slightly calculated, I'm not sure, but I mean, what we shouldn't forget is what a great ambassador Kate is for the country in terms of fashion. You know, everything she wears is a walking advert that will be on front pages around the world. You know, brilliant. We couldn't ask for a better person to sell Britain, particularly in the post-Brexit era.
Post-Megxit as well. It's a slightly wicked question, Rebecca, but do you think that Kate's slightly pleased at all? Do you think she ever has a silent moment of pleasure that Megxit's Meghan's kind of to the side?
I don't think so, because I don't just believe this, I know this, that having Harry and Meghan there was an extra layer that actually protected their children, George, Charlotte and Louis.
That's a good point.
You know, there was somebody else shouldering the burden, because as you mentioned earlier on, we have some very, very old royals and we have some, you know, fairly young royals and not a lot in between. And they want to protect their children from having to be kind of immersed in royal life for as long as they can. Having lost that, that is a layer of protection the kids have lost. So I can't imagine she is that pleased.
Having said that, if Harry gets it right, this could be brilliant news for George and Charlotte and Louis particularly, that this might be a path for them to follow.
Well, they can all become billionaires. Yeah, great.
Talk to JP Morgan. Yeah.
Not sure that's quite what we want.
I think they've got other ideas for George,
If
but
they get
maybe
it right,
the other two.
if they get it right. I'm not sure that JP Morgan is such a good idea, but time will tell, I suppose.
I think we'll leave that for another show. That's a whole other can of worms. Now, it wouldn't be fair to judge Kate's fashion without looking at Will, would it? We'll see some pictures now. What do you make of the Prince's style choices? It's a bit bank manager, isn't it? Does Will need a makeover?
I say, William, never change. You know, you are representing awkward British man at his finest. I mean, we all cringed when we saw Prince Harry undergo that makeover where he started wearing grey suits at every event and trendy trousers.
What's wrong with grey suits?
Well, light grey. You know, it's always that light grey. And he just looked like he'd been groomed to 1 inch of his life by Meghan. Yeah. So no, much better that he stays for.
I think he looks fine. I think he looks great actually, and we don't want him to turn into kind of Dominic Cummings with a kind of low-slung, trendy jeans. Can you imagine? It was just.
I've never heard the word trendy in the same sentence as Dominic Cummings, but yeah.
I don't think he would be comfortable in anything else, and it's always different for him because he is the future king, and there's a certain image to present. And I mean, he's definitely loosened up over the years in terms of his character and his personality and the way he interacts with people on engagements, but he will never ditch those dad jumpers.
I mean, I think we're all, as a people, are quite suspicious of men who look like they've spent a lot of time in front of the mirror in the morning, don't we? And we can't accuse William of that. He's just, as you say, average, normal British man.
And he's happy to shed his hair. We've heard stories this week about Prince Harry allegedly undergoing some sort of hair transplant. So,
Oh, this show just keeps giving. That's another topic for next week, I think. Thank you so much. That is all we have time for this week on Palace Confidential. Thanks very much to my guests, Rebecca, Kate and Richard, and we will see you next time.